do you have any kind of experience, any kind of history with athletes who've come to you with prior SARM use?
Yes. And I would definitely say those are the ones that hormones look the worst. And I'm like, Lord, if anybody says SARMs, please just don't. Just don't. Because they go, not only is their thyroid tanked, their hormones tanked, their liver values are skyrocketed through the roof, but I see a lot of autoimmune issues with them. And that's not fun to deal with.
No, no. And I mean, like, I feel like it's like every seventh or ninth video is about SARMs, and it's the same message. It's like, hey, like, if you're using this because you think it's female friendly, you've been misinformed. Even at low doses, we still see that it's highly hepatotoxic. And I mean, at the time when I started educating myself around PEDs, I mean, the research on SARMs is extremely limited. But even within that, I mean, it's still not promising from an accuracy standpoint. But what we see is that liver enzymes, they're much, much higher, even at low, mild doses from SARMs, as opposed to something like Anavar, any kind of oral anabolic, which to me, I don't think that we can really go through a risk analysis without considering the systemic impact of a PED.
Yeah. The key thing that I want a lot of people to keep in consideration is if you're going to take something and you're going to ingest it into your body, you need to know exactly what it might do. And you need to outweigh the pros and cons in regards to not only prep, but also your overall life and your life cycle. I would say a lot of people, they kind of like, they want to jump into what's going to help me maximize myself. And you really have to focus on how can I get through my potential as a natural athlete first, support everything else in regards to training and diet and stress management and sleep and water and everything. And then you can dive into those, but understanding the profiles is key.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, when we're talking about fatigue management, what have you found to be effective strategies? Because this is one that I feel like for me as an athlete, it was a massive game changer to begin to look at fatigue and be like, yo, I've got to prioritize this as heavily as I do dietary adherence, training volume. Like, have there been any interventions, any strategies for that client? Let's just say that avatar of the client who's like, I work out 6-7 days a week. I'm just one of those people. I mean, that's a big excuse I get, or it is, I guess, rationalization. Hey, I just live this lifestyle. I mean, you've been a professional athlete like for a long time. I mean, like we're talking a decade, almost a decade, right? Give or take.
Non-professional, but yes, thank you.
You've competed at a level that I think a lot of people they do strive to attain, and it's one of the things with fatigue, I guess, like how do you navigate that for clients in assisting them to see the value, to establish that buy-in to managing their fatigue, for better health outcomes, for better hormonal outcomes?
Yeah. First thing depends on, what level are they competing, right? So if they're just kind of like, you're not even close to national stage, not even close to pro stage, we want to make sure that like we don't even get to that level of fatigue. And then it's the question for the other people, like what level of fatigue is okay. So the first thing that you have to do, I mean, you can't be overtraining. Even if you're a professional going into bodybuilding, you cannot overtrain. If you're overtraining, your cortisol is going to be through the roof. You're going to be catabolic. You're going to lose muscle and you're going to become insulin resistant. And then you're not going to be able to lose weight, or you're storing body fat in areas you normally shouldn't. So first thing is making sure that you're training. You're not overdoing exercise and using cardio strategically. The key thing is with fatigue, as best you can, focusing on steps over other sources of cardio is really key. And then I see the top two things that are super beneficial to help with fatigue management. Well, top three: 1, water; 2, electrolytes; 3, food, and how you are consuming your food. So I'm a big fan with anybody, like making sure your water is spread throughout the entire day. You're getting in your electrolytes, sodium, potassium, magnesium, trace minerals, plays a big role with your energy levels. And then when it comes down to food, using it strategically, not only for recovery, but also how you feel best when it comes down to energy. So if anybody is in contest prep, making sure that you're pushing your food, especially your carbs, pre and post workout. And then I finding how you spread out your meals. It's going to be person by person dependent, but using that as a way to say, okay, what makes me feel good throughout the entire day is key. For example, some people find that if they're focusing on getting their fats and their proteins with their breakfast and then using carbs throughout the rest of the day, they feel so much better. Other people feel like, and on an energy standpoint, if they do not start their day with a good amount of carbs, they just feel like crap the entire rest of the day. So I find water, electrolytes, how you eat your food and consume it and spread it throughout the entire day is step one. And then of course the training is key. And then with fatigue management as well, you have to make sure that you're prioritizing, of course, sleep. But two, I find that a lot of people, unfortunately, they make the bodybuilding and the training their life. And that's actually fatiguing for your emotional and mental health and spiritual health. So if a lot of people think, you know what, my bodybuilding's first, I need to go do my training, and they skip out and hanging out with their friends or their boyfriend or going to church, whatever it is. If you do those things, you are going to mentally, emotionally, and spiritually exhaust yourself. And that feels like physical fatigue too. So you have to live your life while still prepping, or you're going to have that fatigue.
I love it. I love it. And I think that's there's a very strong correlation between individuals who have those reports of burnout towards the tail end of their contest prep. But I mean, like, you even see it like deep into their off season. Food's higher, body fat's higher, yet they still feel like they are under an immense amount of stress. And I think being able to manage that and one, be very honest. Okay, how much of this is perceived stress? It's not to say that it isn't real, but if it is self-created, I do think that in itself, I mean, it's a gift. That means that you have control over modulating it and being able to lower that stress level. But those clients, I mean, the ones that I have who are finding their off seasons just as stressful as their prep, really try to take them down this path of like, hey, stress will be higher no matter where your starting point, no matter what your baseline of stress is during your off season or your non-diet phase. It will increase from here, as it should, just because you are going to be spread thin. Physiologically, there are going to be adaptations. And although we expect them, it doesn't mean that they won't be hard. Even though we know around this point, around this body fat, it's going to be very difficult. And you might require more recovery or more methods of recovery to get back to that baseline state. If you're stressed in your off season, if you're stressed in that non-dietary phase at a body fat that, you're in a place to support those reproductive functions, it's only going to become harder from here. So that has to be our priority in that phase.